Hello YouTube, De-bodgery here. Welcome to EV Components Review. Another announcement video. Nucular just announced the P24F. This is basically a rework of their old 24-FET controller, which I think was just called the P24, and they've just modernized their design. This isn't as exciting as like the STR 500, which is a completely new design and lots of new features. This is basically just the old 24 FET modernized without anything so-called new or improved. Or, well, there's improvements, but not really anything new, no new functionality. It's still the same controller as before, specs are the same, things like that. Form factors changed and how they constructed has changed. All right, so obviously, it's now this kind of a flat slab rectangle thing, whereas the old one was in a long hollow shell, with the MOSFETs lined up on either wall of the thing on heat spreaders inside. And so now there's going to be a metal core printed circuit board inside. They're going to be using the tall package MOSFET in here rather than before, and I'll get to some of that after a while. Uh, Other things that changed. For example, before the wires all just came out of one of the end caps of the controller, and now instead you have connectors for all the signal stuff. All the two battery wires come out of one end, and your phase wires, you just use ring terminals, and they're secured down with bolts, and the phase wires come out the other end. So this is something that's more compatible with like Surons and Telerias for sure, and clearly they're trying to make this fit into that form factor, and they've got some adapter plates that make it look like it really should be on those bikes. So definitely look at that and say that's much more attractive than the old 24 FET controllers, kind of more or less hanging on the front of your bike like it wasn't really supposed to be there, off those two tabs that they had sticking out there to take screws. That's their old 24 FET and 12 FET and so on. That was designed around a much more dated controller form factor and shape and things like that. And things are moving more in this kind of a direction, which is definitely more ergonomic and attractive and things like that. So in this little paragraph here, they're talking about these connectors. So the new P24F uses the JWPF connectors, for which we have developed our own silicone plugs. Keep in mind these guys are Russian. Um, you have to kind of read into what they say. The way I interpret what they're saying here is they invented the JWPF connectors, um, and so the only place you're going to find these things is from us. I've never heard of JWPFs before, but hey, it's a big wide world out there. Maybe these things exist someplace else, but they wouldn't be developing their own silicone plugs. They would be developing their own connector, so that these things work. Maybe JWPF comes in similar form without those silicone plugs in them. I don't know. I'm not familiar with those connectors, but if you want this, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be buying them from Nucular and no place else. Okay. Yeah, they talk about how they've got they've got no holes for wires. You have to put them in first, and they're going to seal up, so on and so forth. I don't really care about that. They're just kind of describing their connectors. So this is kind of important information. They have made sure that all their inputs and outputs are protected up to 100 volts. That's the maximums for their controllers anyway. Uh, Early on, their controllers were prone to blowing inputs just at random. I had that happen to me on one. Nothing had changed. It was just simply working 1 minute and then not the next. Yeah, no shorts in the system. It just simply couldn't tolerate whatever it was that happened, and it blew it up. And now they've got lots of protection on things, and they have been improving that since basically 2018. So, their new stuff has got better protections in it, and the fact that it's all protected to 100 volts, good for you. Glad to see that. Good job, Nucular. Definitely should have that in there. Uh, their their specs, I'm pretty sure that's exactly the same as the old just P24 controller. In other words, 500 phase, 350 battery amps. I don't think that's changed even slightly, but I'll bet you anything it actually has changed. And the next paragraph says why. All right, so uh, the previous version used a design with a heatsink on the sides of the case. Let me just talk about that for a second so this makes sense to people. So the TO220 MOSFETs were screwed down to basically a rectangle aluminum bar. It's called a heat spreader, and then that aluminum bar was screwed down to the sides of the case. So that's what they're referring to with the heat sink on the sides of the case. So the actual shell of the controller, which is just a hollow extruded aluminum rectangle, uh, and the two heat spreaders was screwed down to either side of it, which has fins in it. So that's what that was. Um, in the new controller, which is made according to the plate scheme, all the heat is removed to the front radiator of a large area with cooling fins. So the plate scheme, aka metal core printed circuit board, that's what they're really saying. Keep in mind these guys are Russian, and they're translating what they say in English, and so things don't exactly come out quite what they say. Uh, as clearly as it ought to be. Somebody who's an English speaker who's more familiar with these terms, I can interpret what they say. It's like, oh, I know what they mean here. So what they're saying is that the metal core printed circuit board is stuck down to this heatsink that you see right here. And so through all these fins on here, rather than fins on the side, which doesn't cool as well, you're going to get better cooling and so on. So that's what they're really saying here. My thinking is maybe this aluminum heatsink is removable. Maybe, I don't know that as fact, and I'll get to that after a while. Why I think that's maybe possible. Anyway, you can see they come in a bunch of colors. Probably more after a while. All right, so the next thing here, and I have emailed them on this and told them they need to make this a lot clearer because this is confusing. You just read this and you're like, okay, and it doesn't say this straight out. And I would put it in big bold letters right here at the top. So you see, this controller kit includes, you do get a CAN wire for connecting to the onboard computer. So they say that very specifically, but they don't say any other wires. Instead, what they say is you get 22 crimp pins, you get some JWPF connectors. So you have to read between the lines, and what they're not telling you is you don't get any cable harnesses with this controller. You just get the one for the onboard computer, and that's all you get. So, they've said that's it, but they didn't mention any of the other ones that you're not getting. So if you need those things, and there's a really high chance that you do, you're either going to make them because we're going to at least give you the crimp pins and the connectors, and you're going to make them yourself, or here we go, you can buy them yourself because we will make them for you. So that's what they're telling you here for real. I wish they were more clear about this and just straight up said it. Uh, right here, note, you do not get cable harnesses with this controller. Below is, and then say right here, note, here's all the cable harnesses that you need for the controller. Just say it. Anyway, it's not obvious, it's not clear. Yeah, I would definitely change that, and I've told them about that. This is really good. 3-year warranty. I think they're the only guys that do that. I don't know of anybody else that actually offers a 3-year warranty, and they will keep on supporting you long after your 3 years is up. Yeah. So as far as that's concerned, I mean, they're support guys. They're Russian, so translating is probably through like Google Translate into English or English into Russian that way. So things get lost in translation. They can be kind of condescending at times and arrogant, but yeah, these guys just they a 3-year warranty is pretty impressive, and they'll support you, tech support and stuff for much longer than that. So definitely like that about Nucular. Uh, yeah, the English to Russian thing. That's probably why I think that they're like arrogant. It's not that. It's things get lost in translation. That's probably really what that is. And I'm just wrong about my perception of it. All right, so they also have a Suron and Teleria kit. So that's what you're looking at here. So this looks like it's plastic, like probably ABS plastic, but it's designed to specifically fit the form of a Suron. And they also have one for the Teleria. So, whoops, that looks like, Suron and Teleria said, you know what, this is the controller that we have designed for our bikes. It's very attractive. It looks like it's supposed to be there. It doesn't look kind of like that bodge that their old controllers did. You hung them by those tabs and your cables were exposed. It wasn't pretty. This is pretty. I definitely like that. All right, so let's look at their sales page because there's things there that I want to discuss as well. So anyway, uh, see, it comes in a bunch of different colors. Let's just go over the red one. All right, you can see these screws right here. Let me go to a different image, like say that one. So there's two there, and there's two there. It looks to me like you take those screws out, and then the controller will lift out of the heatsink. In which case the bottom of the actual controller itself is smooth, and there's just thermal paste between it and the actual heatsink, and it's held together by those four screws. That's how I interpret this. I could be completely wrong, but that's how I interpret it. Also, a plastic shell, plastic deforms. Four screws just in four places isn't going to be enough to hold the shell down because plastic isn't really rigid like aluminum is. So, if those four screws were holding this plastic cover down, you'd want a couple over here, you'd want a couple over here. You probably want 8 screws or so holding this plastic cover on. So I don't think that's how the plastic cover is held on. I think the whole entire controller is held down to the heatsink by those four screws. And then once you pull it away from the heatsink, on the underside, on the smooth side underneath here, then you've got screws going into the plastic from the other side. I think that's how that works. Don't actually know that, but that's my theory. Yeah, I think that's really how that goes. Um, you've got a couple different pictures here. Let's show something. So right there, you can see the openings. You can see the little pin sticking out. So that's the male connector that is in the controller. And then like in this picture right here, that's those connectors plugged in without any wires on them. And again, you see that same thing there. That's the connectors plugged in without any wires in them. And then this was the thing that first gave me my clue that really what they're telling you without actually telling you is that you're not getting any cabling with it, is this picture right there. I mean, they say this right up there, CAN wire for connecting to the onboard computer, and don't list any other cables. So I thought, well, that's weird. Why don't they list the other cables? But it still didn't like come together as 1 + 1 = 2 until I saw this picture. And they went, oh yeah, they give you the connectors, they give you the crimp pins, and then they expect you to make your own cables. And then it all made sense. And then looking again, here is that one cable. That's the one for a connection to the onboard computer. That's that cable right there. So it's like, all right, yes, flat out, they are not including cabling harnesses with their controller. You have to buy those separate. So just making that super clear. You got to buy those separate if you're adverse to making them yourself. But they do include the crimp pins and the connectors for making them yourself. Keep in mind that Nucular does cater to the DIY crowd. So, that's kind of DIY, right? All right, let's go back here. And if you roll on down, there's all your connectors, okay? They're right here. So it's easy enough to get. There's that valence plastic for the Surons. There's that valence plastic for Teleria. They're right here. You've got all the little adapter thingies for those form factors as well. Like this one right here. You can see it's got the connectors on the end of it already. So you just plug it into your controller, and that then plugs right into your Suron. So you're ready to roll. It's super easy to set up. If you want the ready-made stuff. The other thing that you need is one of these, an onboard computer. So you can't just buy a Nucular controller without getting an onboard computer because all of the programming is done right here. This is your dashboard. That's where you see speed, battery, pack voltage, current, all that stuff. So if you don't have an onboard computer, you can't program your controller. You can't do squat with it. In fact, you can't even turn it on. So yeah, flat out, you're going to be spending as a minimum $610 for the controller and another $110 for the onboard computer, or $720. It's a great price for a 24F controller. It is. But just keep in mind, that's what you're buying. So, yeah. And they, once again, they kind of cater to the DIY crowd. And so they're going to give you the PhD 2.0 connectors and the crimp pins. So you can make your own cables, or you can buy them. Because I do ready make them. If you need something special, you can email them or whatever, or get on their forum, whatever that's on uh, can't think of what it's called, Telegram, and ask them to make you one, and they can. In which case, they can make it the length you want or whatever. But anyway, you also are going to get a basic little set of pins and connectors so you can build them yourself. So it's kind of DIY, but if you don't want to do DIY and you want them to make them for you, you can absolutely get that as well. Anyway, folks, I am looking forward to seeing this controller. I have asked them if they would like to send me one for teardowns. Hopefully they will. And if not, there's a fair chance I'll just end up buying one. Wouldn't be the first time I bought hardware. Bought a ton of it. Yep, like an X9000, KO Moto Pro, KO Moto Rush, ASI Back 8000. Oh, geez. Several far drivers, a bunch of Flip Sky stuff. Trampas. Yeah, you name it. I bought a boatload of controllers and then taken them apart to show you guys on camera. So anyway, hope that helps some folks out, clarifies a few details about these controllers. I'm sure that this is going to be a good design. These guys are not stupid. They do good work. They pay attention to the details. Uh, yeah, and they're constantly making their stuff better. It's not super exciting. It's just a full-blown FOC controller, but it's going to be a good controller. It should be rock solid. I bet you it's going to just run and run and run, and you won't have any problems with it. You probably won't burn them out like you do on KO products. It's going to be efficient. It's not going to be super lossy. Bet you anything that the efficiencies inside here and the optimization of your current paths are going to be really good. Anyway, yep, be nice to take one apart and show it off in the near future. Hope that helps some folks out. Take care. Talk to you later.